Join discord.gg/flatearth and enter a check-in room. Someone will come along and verify you to get involved in the conversation about our Earth.
In the meantime, I'll do a really terrible Kermit the Frog impression. I'm Kermit the Frog. No, I can't do it.
Kermit the Frog!
There you go, man.
Alright, I gave him BC verified, so he's able to talk.
You can control your mic now, Kermit.
Hi, Kermit. Oh, he left. He must have really disliked.
Oh, there he goes. Okay, he had to. Yeah, he's back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we hear you now.
Welcome, man.
Yeah, I didn't have perm, so I was just stuck there listening, but I couldn't say anything. Anyway,
yeah, well, what brings you to the server?
So this is kind of like a tangent or a detour for me because I'm usually in like religious debate servers, and like there are like a minority of people of major faiths who sort of have a idea, who believe in like the flat earth based on religious scripture. So I just kind of wanted to look deeper into that, see where they're coming from. So I came here. Also, the server has like really banger emotes, so that's cool. But then Aether, or like I don't know how to pronounce his name, Aether Gress, was telling me how like the popular conception of the flat Earth is like inaccurate. So now I'm even more confused. Like I want to know what the Earth looks like. And what the space around it looks like, the sun and the moon, and like what the position of the Earth in space is. That's my current question.
Okay. Well, firstly, we don't make claims onto what the Earth looks like from outer space, because for all we know, outer space is a reification, as in it's an abstract idea people sell to you as if it's true, but we can't prove it's true. So we can't tell you, okay, from this position, we know what the Earth looks like. Does it look like a disk? Does it look like a square? Does it look like some ground with a dome? We have no idea. But we do know we stand on this ground, and when we've measured the ground, it does not seem to have a consistent curvature, which it requires to be the globe model, which NASA proclaims as 6,378 kilometers, which is like 3,500 miles or something in its radius. And so that's sort of where we stand. We don't speculate into what exactly the Earth is when we don't know exactly what it is.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so what exactly do you think flat earthers believe?
Well, as it was presented to me, there's some variation based on the religious background, but basically the idea I was told is that it's a disc-shaped flat, and the sun and moon revolve around it. There are those from the Athari Muslims creed who say that the earth is flat, the sun and moon revolve around it, and there is this great whale called the Noon under it. Those who come from a Christian background and interpret Genesis say like the earth is flat. There's this like mountain thing under it, upside down, but more importantly, there's like a dome on top, or a firmament.
Yeah, the firmament does get discussed here a lot. I've never been up there to see it, but basically the idea is that it's contained, so a firmament is sort of a rational conclusion to having a contained area which can hold gas pressure. So that's sort of the main evidence people have for the firmament sort of claims, in opposed to an infinite universe where there's not really a barrier between the atmosphere and the vacuum of space, yet the atmosphere remains in our Earth area, while there's just this infinite mass of nothingness.
Well, usually, I mean, gravity seems to be sufficient to explain why the atmosphere doesn't just like go away in a sense.
Yeah, I know like they have gravity, but in the sort of forum we talk in, people seem to think gravity is like, so how do you, what exactly is gravity? They say it's mass attracting mass. We do know that when we drop something down, it goes down. But as far as I've worked out, things go down because everything's seeking its equilibrium in a density gradient. So if I drop a helium balloon, it's going to go up because the helium's higher than the air, and it's just settling at its equilibrium. And so in that sense, gravity has a different sort of definition when you say gravity just in the real world compared to gravity with the pseudoscientific connotations.
I see. I think. Okay.
I'm sorry if like some of the things I say go over your head a bit. It's probably
That's
a bit,
fine.
yeah.
I mean, my understanding of things is fundamentally from a different framework than yours, so naturally there'll be like a difficulty in trying to bridge that. So that's not fine. I think, I mean, you explained it well, so that's fine.
Okay, and you were saying you do a lot of religious debates. So do you come from a certain religious point or an atheistic point? I'm just curious.
Me, I'm an atheist, and actually, because that's where I came from. Again, like I said, it's kind of like a little detour for me. My actual first question, which unfortunately wasn't answered and isn't answerable, which is fine. But what I was curious about was the demographics of the flat earther people. I was wondering, like, how many are atheists, how many are religious, but there doesn't seem to be a census, so that's fine.
Yeah, well, the flat Earth is doesn't really cater to like a specific people. It's just to the people who measure it and see it's not flat. But there's definitely like people who just like cling to the flat Earth as a belief because they read it in like a scripture, and then they don't actually have that empirical basis to it. But a lot of the people you talk to in here, not everyone, of course, are actually the kind who might still also have a belief in God or something, but they've also like actually tested it for themselves, seen it for themselves, and not just solely relied on someone's writing.
I see. Yeah, that was the heart of the question. I wondered how many people primarily or even solely reached the flat earth conclusion based on scripture versus those who applied the more scientific method. And from what I'm hearing from you, if I understand correctly, is that the former are a minority.
Well, it really depends on who you talk to. In this server, I like it's a big deviation. It really depends, but a lot of people on this server are very much see it for yourself. But then there's, I think, some of the I guess the people I would have less what's the word? Like I'd taken less of what they say would be the ones who just take it on scripture, just because they'll just, oh man, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like they don't have that actual evidence backing them. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is the correct way to sort of approach the situation is to look at it with empirical evidence being your foundation and your grounding, and you build everything up from that. Whereas there are a multitude of people who call themselves flat earthers who have their basis and foundation set on some kind of scripture and stuff, which is, it's okay, I guess, but it's just logically not really sound.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would, of course, agree with that. But there are those who place an understanding. Well, wait, let me say that again. But there are some people who place the religious scriptures as the highest authority of knowledge, and they do their own thing.
Yeah,
That's fine.
but that's circular reasoning, and it's the same when globe earth believers use circular reasoning. It's just in different doctrines.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Stacy, Kermit. So a lot of the things that people are saying here, you have to understand that the culture here is derived on people understanding foundational information from a standpoint of empirically testing and having people retest what they're saying. So it has nothing to do with belief. It has everything to deal with it being something tangible and physical in the physical and natural world. So what you're used to probably is a conversation with somebody in a belief system saying that, oh, I believe the earth is flat because the Bible says so. What we're dealing with in here is people that can verify information empirically. So it has to go through a rigorous method, right? So in that way, we're able to then test these methods that we talk about in here. So it's not something that if you and I say that, well, a particular scripture says something, then you're like, well, I disagree. And that could be valid. That then becomes a debate. What we do in here is talk about things that are fundamental for your understanding and logic and reason to verify the information that we say. So in that way, it takes away from the idea that it's a belief system, but more that you can actually say that this is now empirical. I don't have to believe it because I can have you go and do a test and you'll find out for yourself that what I'm saying is true. So this isn't an agree to disagree position. It is a right and wrong position. Either you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. That's what it is.
I see, and I agree with the methodology as a non-religious person. I think that's the way to approach things. However, what's interesting that Salt Lake Stacy was saying. By the way, I've been there. Utah is a banger state. Anyway,
Oh no, not from there, but yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. But the Salt Lake itself is a beautiful site. They also got buffaloes that roam there. Anyway. Well, I mean, if you don't make any claims about like even the shape of the Earth, then then I'm not gonna find my answers here because that's kind of what I was interested. The cosmology, I knew this one guy.
Think about it like this. We don't operate on the fact that he said, she said, right? Like, because you might go into an anecdotal testimony, but what I want to redirect your focus on is if what we do in here is that we give you evidence for what we say. So all you have on the side of the globe, however, are stories. You have nothing but theories, right? Subjective opinions. You don't have any foundational structure for logic and reason. Not on the globe Earth side you do. We've had many years in here. We've talked to many academic scholars, as in PhDs, cosmologists, astrophysicists, and they don't have the answers. Like, as you would say, your endeavor right now, probably your mission is to search out any answers that would be sufficient to a flat Earth cosmology. We would tell you that there is no such animal in existence for anyone to say that their cosmology is able to be proven from a standpoint of, let's say, a skeptic. And I would say it this way. Anything that they're proposing to you, whether it be an overall worldview, like realm of existence, like if they say I live on a globe or the earth is concave or whatever it is, there is no evidence to an overall worldview paradigm. There isn't. No evidence for that. Not people saying they went to space, or because see, when we ask people certain questions, right, they don't give us sufficient answers to be verified. They give us stories, and that's all they've given you, right, and me. So when you're growing up in this understanding, you're growing up with this paradigm of being told a story about what the Earth is, and so within that fantasy, a lot of people have given themselves over to like how to think about the fantasy in a different way, and they think of dark matter, and you take a look at the things that Einstein would say about general relativity and all these things. So when you start to put them into the concept of physical and natural world, you're not going to get a conclusion of anything that's testable. You're already in the realm of fantasy, and there's no way these things can be tested. How can you measure time and space from the concept of it being warped? It's impossible. It's a concept of the mind. It is not something to be put into physical and natural world. So therefore, anything that you've already been believing, right? Even I would go so far as to say even your atheism is a belief. So you might think that it's all built on logic and reason, Kermit, but it has no foundations in the root of something that's been verified. Evolution is all of these are conjured up stories that men have been waxing themselves intelligent to be telling other men. There's no foundational structure for that to be logically and reasonably sound. However, you can go ahead and speak on this if you'd like, but I've given you kind of a foundation of what we talk about in here. So
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm beginning to get a better idea of what this server is like. It's definitely not what I expected. So, obviously, there's absolutely nothing wrong to admit that you don't know something. That's actually a good thing, I think. What I'm curious about is beyond the Earth being flat, what can you positively say is also true with evidence?
from the Earth paradigm, the Earth
Yeah.
is stationary. That the Earth is stationary. It does
So
not
the
move.
Earth is. So one is the Earth is flat, and two, the Earth is stationary.
Correct.
Beyond that is untestable.
Well, I mean, go ahead and try to talk about something beyond what I said, and think about, and we can even talk about it if you'd like.
If I just want to interject for a second. Kermit, the live stream voice text is kind of the other half of this chat. I don't know if you can see it, but it should be right there in proximity to where, the top of this list.
The Speculation Sunday.
No. Yeah, it's right. Okay, so there's a voice channel, Kermit. Right above it, there's a text channel.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that text channel has relative chat to this specific conversation that we're having, or like if you bring up a point, somebody would want to answer it in text. That's where they'd put it in that text channel.
Okay. Oh yeah, cool. So like, are some people here without mics? So I should just check the text if they like respond or say something.
The live stream voice text. The live stream voice text will give you the information if somebody's texting. So
we have mics, but we're not trying to interrupt Mayhem while he's talking to you. We're trying to just let y'all have a proper conversation without, being too rowdy.
Yeah, that's cool. So the Earth is stationary. That means the sun is the one that's moving,
correct,
or at least
correct,
relative to the Earth. And the
yes,
moon?
correct. The same. Okay, so let's just say everything in the heavens moves. As far as your base axiom, right? What your foundation, your base axiom would be is to be built on what can be observed, and then move along the lines of your base axiom. Well, I see everything in my perspective because my vantage point is from here on Earth. From here on Earth, right? As you stand on it, you view everything in the heavens to be moving. Now, the next step would be, how can I verify that it's the Earth moving, not the things in the heavens? So what would be the next logical step to go and begin your work to figure out how that can be done? How can that be tested? Because we don't just tell people this is just a base axiom and take it on belief. We tell them, how can it be tested? What can you do to put this into the physical and natural world to be tested? So I would ask you the same thing. Using your critical thinking, Kermit, how can we test this?
Well, if you make a model like the current popular one, you could look at the solar, lunar eclipse, the seasons, the time zones, and the model would very accurately describe it, so it kind of works as a model.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty much it.
Right. So modeling something, is that the physical and natural world, or is that just a model?
I mean, it's a model that accurately describes how the natural and physical world works, like when you look at the planets in the solar system and you observe their motion, you can, for example, conclude that these different planets have different gravities and they sort of all affect each other to some extent. And by measuring like their velocity, their orbits, you can get an idea of like mass and gravity and that kind of stuff.
Sure. So you could say that, right, by modeling something. But then you have a model that you're looking at. So what if you superimpose that information over some other type of idea? So it becomes that idea. So what you're saying is because we have a model, then therefore we have that particular mindset of understanding. So if I propose to you an ever-expanding cosmology with this model in mind, then it becomes that we live in this specific idea that I've just proposed. How can I put that into the physical and natural world if I've only given you a model? Do you see what I'm saying?
Well,
You're making my idea that I have in my head, my fantasy of what I think the cosmology is, become a reality. And now you've moved it into reality by proxy of your mind. You haven't done anything in the physical and natural world to verify what I've said. You're just using what I've told you as a catalyst for your idea and understanding of cosmology. Do you see the wrong thing here? Hopefully I'm pointing this out to you. So
well,
you've taken what somebody has said and used your mind to then think about it in a way that it is reality when you don't have any verified information to go on. You said it yourself. I just used a model. So if you do that, you haven't verified that specific information is true in the sense of like what we can test. I can't test these things. This is only a predictive understanding. Because
well,
something
yeah,
has predicted. Yeah, go ahead, Kermit. Go ahead.
yeah. So, I mean, there's a difference between a fact and a scientific theory. We gather facts, which are data points, and the scientific theory or the model, in a sense, is what describes the relations between them or why they are how they are. So it's like a couple of dots, right? And then you connect the dots and it makes a shape. So you have these dots in a circle. There are certainly gaps because we don't know everything, but you can safely say, "Oh, this is the shape of a circle." And so, even though you have like a missing dot, you can be like, "We suspect that there is a dot here." And then later, when like our instruments improve, we do end up finding like, "Oh yeah, it was correct." And if we find the dot somewhere else, then we review our model. So, for example, we might have a series of dots that are vertical. So we're like, oh, we draw a line. We're like, this is the scientific model. And it is accurate in this context. But then in the future, we might realize that, no. This vertical set of dots is only one of like many, many, many parallel series of vertical dots. Thus, it's not a thin vertical line, but like a really thick horizontal line. And that's a more accurate understanding of or just reality. So, like, we build models based on the data we have, and then these models can like describe or predict other situations that are similar. But like a theory of gravity isn't necessarily going to explain a different topic. I mean, it's not like a universal thing. I'm not sure, but I think things like black holes kind of disrupt the gravity model. However, that's just like a limitation of our current understanding, but the gravity model seems to perfectly describe the motion of our solar system. So it works pretty well.
Yeah, but you're right now speaking in a way of these ideas that men have purported to say are the physical and natural reality that we have is real. So it is real only in your mind. So Kermit, like what I'm saying is these guys who have said these things in the days of old, right? The ideas, these models, these predictive things that you are talking about, it sounds like you've already placed them in the physical and natural world by proxy of your mind. You haven't done so by verifying if they're true or not. This is the issue that we're having. The issue isn't that they've put out some information and we're not believing it. The issue is you believed it based on what they've said. It's a religion. It's what it is. And you don't know that it is or not because you're taking the word science as it has been bastardized, and you're supplanting it in a way that you're now thinking of science as this idea that this guy's talking about cosmology in a way that you couldn't describe because it wasn't foundational to your understanding. You didn't make this up. You're advocating for the position because it sounds something reasonable to think about. But this cosmology cannot be verified by you. You see things in the sky, but you can't say that they're in a vacuum of space. You can't say that we live in a solar system. You can't say any of these things other than what you see. The only thing you can say from your base axiom is the things that you see. I see things moving in the sky. Whether or not you're in a solar system is irrelevant. You don't know that. You believe it because it is a story that you've always been believing. So, and likewise, as a religious point, you will defend it without any verification whatsoever. So this is our issue. We're getting people to critically think about that information and understand how is what I'm saying able to be verified. And so the person who has been in this, or I should say, the person who's been subject to this information has been lambasted with all kinds of understandings from their points, right? These talking points that they have. And so it's to your detriment because all you do is regurgitate information. You have no knowledge of what's been said. I could even ask you, do you know what a scientific theory is? I could even ask you, do you really know from the standpoint of a cosmologist or an astrophysicist, what they would think? But of course, you might retort that you don't know. I don't know. So now is the time. If you're holding on to this as a belief, or if you really know this is true, you can come forth and say, you know what, it's just a belief I have. Based on what this guy is saying, I trust the information because he's astrophysicist, or I've heard some talking points from a science communicator. But you can be honest with that. You can honestly tell us, look, I'm straight up, man. I just believe what they're saying. Why shouldn't I, right? And is that your mindset, Kermit? Do you have the mindset of someone who just believes this information?
Well, I mean, you touched on a lot of topics, and some of them are sort of deeper questions, like the nature of knowledge versus belief, and ultimately we all experience reality in our minds, in a sense. But those are deeper philosophical questions that they're difficult to talk about. The other thing is that belief as a scientific process versus belief as a religious process. I agree that these two are similar in that they're systems of thinking, they're methodologies of attempting to reach the truth. They're, in that sense, they're two different categories, or they're within the category of like the approach to knowledge, but they are different systems. And the last thing you were talking about is believing in the authorities, which is, and that's a sociological thing, because on some level, and this is the point where flat earth becomes inherently tied to, I mean, excuse me, but there's no other way of explaining it, but conspiracy theories or just concepts of distrust of systems in our society globally, on a global level. And in that sense, in our modern life, we do, of course, have to put quote unquote faith in a lot of institutions and a lot of other people. That's just the nature of the fact that, like, I don't have the time to prove everything I believe in, but I don't have to critically think about every little thing in my life. Like, when I go to a doctor, or before that, I'm sick, right? And I want to find a cure. And this is just a purely hypothetical scenario, but I could either go to a hospital with doctors or like a witch doctor. My critical thinking skills comes in the decision to where to find deeper knowledge that I can't possibly just don't have the time and energy to focus on, because we live in a hyper specialized society with division of labor. So my critical thinking comes in, okay, well, who's more likely a better authority on this knowledge, the witch doctor or the hospital? And on this level, that's where I can successfully use my critical thinking skills with the resources that I have to determine that, you know what, I think a doctor and a hospital are the better authority for giving me the medicine. Now, when I go to the doctor and he prescribes a certain medication, it's extremely unrealistic to ask me to critically analyze the chemical structure of the medicine itself to determine whether the doctor is honest or lying to me, because
but why?
that would require.
Yep.
Because
Yeah, but I would
because
ask.
I
I
just
would ask the question though, Kermit. I know where you're going, but I think that's extremely fallacious. That reasoning that you have behind there to trust so blindly it's going to be your undoing. It already has been. I would say it already has been your undoing. You don't realize it. You don't know how far down the rabbit hole you are right now, Kermit. Because you've given your mind over to just not critically thinking about things. You have been incredibly indoctrinated. Like I would say at this point right now, I hopefully the hope is that you're not beyond help, right? You can come back from that. My hope is, because I hope for everybody to come back from that. But it seems incredibly difficult right now for you as a person who's been so well indoctrinated for you to come back from that, because you haven't given your critically thinking process due diligence. So right now, everything that you process is with this type of mindset. You've just described how you view the world, and that is incredibly illogical. Because let me just make a statement on what you said. Because if you went to a doctor and you didn't look into anything and you just blindly trusted that, perhaps the person you were going to wasn't medically trained even. So they could even be mistreating you or something. And you were giving your trust over to somebody because you weren't critically thinking, over to somebody who wasn't well equipped to deal with any symptoms that you were having. So this is why.
but that's
I'm just saying.
point.
I'm just like I'm putting it out there because of your non-critical thinking. You're going to be put in a scenario where it could jeopardize your health even. So just saying what you said lends credence to the fact that you're not well equipped to critically think about things. So it's become extremely fallacious for you to say things now. So when you are now coming forward and saying that is the reason why I don't have to think about things critically, because if I was to, I'd have to examine and evaluate everything in my life. And who has time for that? Right? That's what you said. Who has time for that? Who has time to critically think about everything? Because no one has time for that. I mean, realistically, right? But what I'm saying is because
there's
you've shut
two things here.
Go ahead. Yeah, I've spoken enough.
Two things here. I use critical thinking to the most possible extent that I can. Like you're talking about the possibility that the doctor is a fraud. That is something that can be determined by critical thinking skills, and I do that. But where I understand the limits of that is like when my computer is broken, I use my critical thinking skills to find the person who is most likely to fix it, a good IT company that can do that. When I do that with my car, when I do that with a doctor, when I do that with, buying furniture or something, there is critical thinking skills to understand where to find the best source of knowledge for something. But no one can possibly become an expert on every medicine, on every car design, on every field of knowledge.
I get that. I know where you're coming from, but specific to you, I think that's where the critical thinking should begin. So if it's something that involves you, let's say if you're going to build a house, if you're going to things that you involve your life, you're going to critically think about, right? So to my point, everything that you deal with in life needs to be critically thought about. So it actually works against your point. And it's not the fact that I'm talking about the entire knowledge of everything. That's not what I'm saying. As you go through life and there's things that are necessities for your life, whatever it is, healthcare, or living somewhere. It doesn't matter. Whatever you do, you're going to critically think about the thing that you are doing. So yes, in essence, you are critically thinking about everything that you do specific to you. So anything that's concerned with you, you're going to be dealing with those on a very critically thinking basis. So a person who critically thinks about things doesn't need to know everything about everything. We're talking specifically to you. If you're going to move somewhere, you're going to examine the things. You're not just going to say, oh, let me just trust this one guy who says he can build a house. You're going to examine what he's doing, what is the quality of work, and all that. And then you're going to go into like talking to the person and hiring him or whatever. Or you could be just like someone else who doesn't care and says, I'll hire anybody who builds a house. So specific to you, you're going to want to critically think. So, and again, to my point, if you start to learn things, okay, I've learned about cosmology. Specifically to me, I'm looking at cosmology a certain way. Well, how have you thought about it? Have you thought about that maybe you were lied to, or it's true information, or what is, like, you don't go to a place where you, in your mind, everything that you consume personally is just going to be taken, as a foregone conclusion. Oh yeah, it's already like that. Some expert figured it out. I don't need to worry about that. No, you're going to stop and say, hang on a second. Let me see if what I know specifically to me, if this is anything that's something in the physical natural world. So the point I'm raising, though, Kermit, is not everything about knowing knowledge about all things. It's specifically to you and your mind. Whatever you're consuming, your locality or information that you've consumed via academia, anything specific to you, that information, are you critically thinking about those things? And so anything new in the future that you come across, that's the same thing. You got to use the same level of scrutiny. And so for me, it's like, if you tell somebody to be a critical thinker, it's not, well, now you got to learn everything about everything. No, who can do that, right? That's impossible. What I'm saying is specifically to your knowledge and what access you want to gain from whatever knowledge you want to gain. It's going to be something that you're a process, a critical thinking process. You're going to scrutinize everything that you learn. So even your atheism, as you so call it, everything. So you're going to scrutinize. You're going to be like, okay, why do I think this? Do I have a logical foundation for this? Like it's all going to come back to what's important to you specifically. And so,
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. The more something affects me, the more important it is to use my critical thinking abilities to their maximum
correct.
extent. Yeah, I
Correct.
agree. I agree. And
So, it just eliminates.
So just one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
We agree on methodology, right?
I would hope so, because it sounds like we were not in step previous. I think maybe you thought I was talking about everything. Like a critical thinking person would have to acknowledge the fact that every single thing in this world would have to be, and that's not what I'm saying, because that's impossible. You can't do that.
No, I understood what you were trying to say, and I agree with you that you use critical thinking as much as possible for all the things that affect you, but also recognizing that absolute knowledge of everything is impossible. Well, I mean, theoretically impossible. I don't know. I mean, maybe you're really smart or whatever, but yeah, no, I think we can agree on that, yes?
So far, so good. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference here is in our conclusions.
Well, I think it's in I think it fails. I think what's failing here is the process of the methodology. So if you're saying that within the steps of how you critically think about something, you can say you don't take it to the level of actually identifying where you're going wrong. I think you're just taking things for granted and saying, well, on this particular let's say step 1, step 2, step 3, on a particular step, you're saying I'm just going to go ahead and trust the authority on this, and we'll move forward from there. I'm not. Every step is critically processed. So you'd have to go from, like, just take, for example, your base axiom on knowledge of the earth, right? So when you step out into the field, right? Let's say you go out into the field and you're looking at the earth, right? You're looking upon the earth. You're saying, okay, how do I know something? Well, how can I attain knowledge? Let me look at the heavens. Let me look at the ground. Let me look at everything. How am I going to attain some knowledge about this? Do I need to go to a book? Do I need to what do I need to study, right? So you're beginning to kind of understand the physical natural world, how you're going to process that information. And in order to do that, right, you need to run something through a test, right? Let's test things. Let's see how far we can see today. And you take down ambient air temperature, you look at a visual perspective, you're going to go through some process where you're going to interpret information a specific way. And then once you do that, you hand it over to somebody else, right? Hey, look, this is what I've done. Follow the same method and see if you come up with the same conclusion, right? So when you do that, the person says, okay, what did you do? And you hand over the keys to whatever you did. Oh, this is, I use this observer height, this visual range. I've used these tools, let's say, for optics. And then you hand this stuff over to somebody else. Somebody else does the test. They repeat the test and they say, well, I can see where you came up with this conclusion because I've come up with the same. Or this is different and my conclusion is different. Whatever the case is, more people can actually run through the process in which you have done and then verify or falsify the information, right? Which means that things can go through a method, this specific rigor of the process that you've already created, then becomes something that has been tested, been verified, and now it's moved into the realm of empiricism, right? So you're now empirically knowing the information due to a process, right? Because it's ran through a method. And so now we can start to talk about things in a real way versus, okay, I made an observation of the night sky. And I think that light in the sky is a dinosaur or is a flying spaghetti bowl or whatever. I don't care. I'm saying something, right? And so you got to now look at the thing in the sky and tell me how to disprove what I've said. And if you don't have a method to disprove what I said, then you're wrong. That's unfair, isn't it? If I make up terms and then I give you a way to disprove the terms that I've made up, I've given you an impossible task. Because how can you do such a feat?
Burden of proof.
Right, the burden of proof. So you get where I'm going with this. So I've made up a story about what I see. Now, and I'm telling you to disprove my story. And you can't do that because it's impossible. How can you disprove my story? It's a story. It's something that I've conjured up with my own thinking. And because I've said so, and let's say I've convinced, 10 of my buddies. Now 10 of my buddies are following me because I've conjured up a story. What's going to happen to the story? It's going to get bigger and bigger, right? Because I have a following now. Well, you don't, because you're one guy who's using logic and reason. You're like, I don't see a dragon by way of what we understand a dragon to be if we're talking about a dragon. Because doesn't a dragon have scales? I'm like, yeah, but you can't see them. My dragon is invisible. You can't see my dragon, but he's up there. That light in the sky, that's my dragon. And you're going to be like, that's not even logical, man. Like, you can't even say that because the attributes of a dragon wouldn't even follow what you're looking at. But I would tell you, my friends agree with me. I got my friends. They agreed that visible dragon's up there. And you're going to have a tough task ahead of you because now you got to disprove what I'm saying based on logic and reason, right? So now, you see where I'm going with this, Kermit? I'm basing my ideas on something that I've conjured up, and you can't defeat it because it's my thinking, my conjuring. And of course, I've gotten some other people, because I'm very good with words, to believe me.
Okay, let me ask you a question that should help clear up everything. So, suppose there is a field of knowledge that is so deep and complex that you would, in essence, have to spend your entire career, your entire life in employment in academia, focusing on it to gain, let's say, even a basic understanding of the field. And so, would it be valid for me or an individual to use their critical thinking skills to their fullest extent to evaluate an institution and verify to the best of their ability that this institution and the people in it are honest, competent, experts, legitimate, and a good authority or a good source of knowledge on this topic? would you then trust their statements even if you can't fully understand it when you verified their honesty, competency, expertise, legitimacy, and their rigor?
Right. So what we're gonna find out here is we're gonna have to, because obviously there's some things that are really complex, right, in life. I don't discard that, Kermit. I'm not even disputing that that's a fact. But what I am saying though is the foundation of what the basis of what we're talking about. So if you have an example of such a field, you gotta, let's put an example to it, because I think that brings light to what you're saying versus something that it's not. I don't want to label something that you're speaking of something else. So just to put context, what field would you then be talking about?
Well, for me personally, like quantum physics, yeah. I would have to spend my entire life studying it, and that's not the path I'm on. I'm studying econ actually. So if I can verify that the GSI Institute, just whatever, I made that up. I critically analyze them to the best of my ability, and I'm like, okay, with every tool and sense I have and every shred of logic, I can tell that these guys are honest and they're experts and they're legitimate. I can't fully understand, or maybe even the basics of the things they're saying or their conclusions, but based on my analysis of them, I can, in essence, put my quote unquote faith, or I would rather use trust in them. Would that break your definition of being a critical thinker?
I think where we would part ways is where you would think that physical and natural world, like what would you how would you define that? Because if you would then say that theoretical modeling is your definition of the physical and natural world, I would say you're false. But if you're using that as the basis for somebody speaking of something complex and then putting it into the physical and natural world as theoretical modeling being their foundation, then I would say you're incorrect. That's not the physical natural world. That's ideas of men worked on pieces of paper, or computations, or something other than what we can test physically. I can't take a cup of whatever you're saying and then paint it red or whatever. I can't do that. If it's something that it's worked on a metaphysical level, like a spiritual, or then I'd say we'd be able to part ways there, because you're going to go off into a field where you're just going to be talking about theoretical information, and you can never put that into the physical and natural world, not in the real way. You can only use them in computations or in trying to draw things out and graphs and charts and weighing things out in this way. That is not fundamental to a critical thinker. I think this is more fields where you're trying to figure things out that could not be put into the physical and natural world. And if you can see where I'm saying the ways where we're going to differentiate, right? You can't support what you're saying or what you're doing in the physical and natural world, other than correlation at best, right? You'd be able to correlate things like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to use something as well as an example, so I can probably help here. Things in the
I
health.
was about to bring that
Things
up.
in the.
Just one second. I was
Yeah,
about
go
to
ahead.
bring that up, an example, and here's one I think is good. Germ theory versus the four humors theory. Would you consider that a model, or as you say, a story or fantasy, or is that part of the natural and physical world?
Right. What was my passing method here? Would be correlation. Remember, like, are we using correlation as a? Because if correlation is the way that you're using to assume that because something's working a specific way, and we would say that we have something that would lend credence to it being because of something else, right? Correlation is not causation. That's what I'm trying to get to. So correlation is not causation, but correlation becomes an identifier for people to like. And I was going to use an example. You might have brought an example. Let me bring one up too. But people say that eating too much eggs causes bad cholesterol. The bad cholesterol then gives you a higher risk for heart disease. Let's say. So I'm using something as in the foundations for these. Where are the studies at? Like, because we're using correlation here. It's not causation. We're saying if a person eats too many eggs in their life, then that causes them to have heart disease, right? So that is correlation. It's not causation. And a lot of papers have been put out to kind of support whether eggs are good or bad. And there's been a back and forth on that. And the idea behind it is that you think that you're working with physical and tangible things because your eggs are something physical. People are ingesting them. Their bodies are, utilizing the proteins and stuff from the eggs and the minerals from it. And so we're saying because of the bad cholesterol that eggs have, the correlation to that would be people with higher risk for heart disease because of their bad cholesterol are the reasons why bad cholesterol causes heart disease, right? So there has been some studies to kind of like let people think that this is a cause for heart disease. That's why their intake of eggs is reduced, or why you see charts that are put out there in the world where eating too much eggs, or let's stay away from it. Let's eat eggs only at a very minimal basis, or whatever the case is. But what I'm saying here, though, if you're relating something to something else due to the fact that you're saying because of this thing, there's a possibility this thing has a connection to heart disease. You know what I mean? So you are then conjuring up something that people now are looking at. Well, this guy is well studied in this. He wrote a paper. Now we understand that eating too many eggs could cause heart disease. You know what I mean? There's a, you know what? Yeah, so that's kind of like another instance where correlation. I don't know, like you're using germ theory and all that, but you could say certain things like that with correlation, right? I don't know.
So, sorry, quickly. So, would you trust the person who's tested the egg theory? Would you trust them or would you not trust them?
Well, I would say this, man, because for me, all I care about is results. All right. So results are the thing that's most important to me. So if somebody says, right, eggs are bad for you, and I'm looking at a sample set, let me look at a sample set, right? The thing that I'm using is the physical natural world. Who's eating eggs, right? Okay. So we're going to look at people who eat eggs. Let's look at all the people everywhere, right? Everyone who eats eggs. What type of eggs? Like eggs from chickens, right? So eggs from chickens. How many people eat eggs from chickens? Get a sample set, get a study going, start talking to people. Like, how do they feel? Like, there's a method of rigor that I'm going to start to put to this, right? Because I want to find out the information. I don't want to just blindly believe some paper that's been put up. I want to know how they got that information to be true. What method of rigor did they put to it? Was it just some kind of, simple study? Was it just like, well, we've taken a poll in our city. In our city, a lot of people don't eat eggs, but the majority of some of the people that do commented. Like, that's not a real sample set for me. So I'm going to look at
that.
I'm going to look at the study, right? So the study that's been taken. Some people take this information for granted. Specifically, Kermit. So if you're seeing what I'm saying right now is, if I'm going to critically think about it, I'm going to find out, okay, well, I know some people eat eggs, and sometimes I know farmers who've eaten eggs their whole lives, and they eat eggs by the dozen, on the weekly. So I know for a fact that some people who've had chickens eat eggs, live long lives. And so I'm going to say, okay, I have an argument for and an argument against. So I'm going to weigh them out. So the for, I'm going to hear like what's happening with the guys that are for it, the ones against it. I'm going to hear the ones against it. I'm going to hear both sides. I'm going to also do a study, right? So just you want to give this as much due diligence as you can possible, right? And so you put it to because it's me. It's going to affect me. I want to eat eggs. I love the taste of eggs. So I want to know how it affects me in a very real way. So I'm going to do the homework. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to listen to people. I'm going to see a sample set. I'm going to use the physical natural world, right? Where are eggs produced? What are the best type of eggs? All that. Everything is going to come involved here because it involves me. I'm going to be eating eggs. So specifically to me, I want to know, right? So then, therefore, once I've done all my homework, I've done the rigor, I've seen everything, I have my conclusion. I've seen the truth. I know what it is. I don't have to blindly believe some other study that comes out and says, "Hey, do you know eggs are so unhealthy for you? If you eat them, you're gonna die." Like, I know for a fact that information is misinformation, and I know that. I don't have to just, like, you know what I mean? Because I built a foundation now. I've did the work. I've critically thought about it. I've ran it through a process. It's been had enough rigor where I know that now, because of the facts that I have, nothing can usurp that. I don't care how much paperwork you've done on it, and later on you said no, but there's a specific thing in eggs that you didn't look at, and like, it's not, because I have real information, right? And that's what I'm saying, though, Kermit. So I'm leaning more credence to when I ran through things through a process, a method with rigor. Then I'm going to come back and know something to be true. I don't have to. It's become empirical to me, right? So once it passes this method of empiricism, then I have no need for, like, just saying that I believe this paper. I can say I know. I don't have to believe anymore. I know. You see what I mean? Like, that's when it passes that. It goes from me just trusting and believing to now I know. I don't have to trust and believe. I have information. I have facts. I have evidence to lend towards the case that, eggs aren't bad for you. And I'm using this as an example, okay? So mind you, people might think differently, but this is the way, processing this information should come to someone who's of the same mind, like, that wants to put something through a method. And hopefully I'm making some sense, Kermit, because I don't want it to sound like it's, that's pretty bananas for you to think that you can, do that and then come up with a conclusion. So anyway.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just a little bit curious because maybe I'm not explaining myself right, but at least when I say critical thinking, I'm consciously trying not to blindly follow. It's just that I recognize that there is realistically a limit to how much critical thinking I can apply, especially in the modern world. And your egg example was perfect. You apply as much critical thinking as you could. But when a certain topic reaches a certain level of complexity, like the egg example is good. So, but let's modify that scenario a little bit and make it a bit more complex. Let's say that the question at hand isn't, whether eating eggs will hurt you or not, but whether eating 5 eggs today will cause you cancer 10 years from now. It's an extreme example, but just roll with it for the hypothetical. And so it does affect you, but you lack the tools and just like some advanced machine or the instruments to observe the chemicals and how they react to, like, 100% or just to a high degree conclude whether this will happen. So your options are either don't eat eggs in the hope that you won't get cancer in 5 years, or be like, I'm not going
Oh,
to,
are you talking about the time period? You're talking about time. So within the 10-year gap.
The time period is an example of just the limitations, the realistic limitations of critical thinking. Because you're talking about eggs in relation to you. But the question is, if this egg would hurt you 10 years from now, based on a choice you did today, your critical thinking skills will be limited. You're going to have to put more trust on an institution that is more capable of examining this thing, where there's a realistic limitation on you. Maybe it's not time that's the specific limitation, but just that you would need a super advanced what's it called? Like what's that telescope thing that zooms in on really small things? What's that called?
Microscope?
Yeah, microscope. Yeah. So you can't, like, realistically verify yourself unless you shell out like $2 million on like a super advanced thing. So what I'm saying is that this methodology is foundationally perfectly sound, and I agree completely. It's just that the extent of it is becoming more and more limited as we move forward and forward in time, simply due to the reality of the division of labor, the increasing population of Earth, Earth and our increasing dependence on other people, not just on a personal level, but on a societal, institutional, bureaucratic level. And so the importance of critical thinking is shifting from critical thinking about the nature of reality itself, because our understanding of the nature of reality is so complex and deep. We have hyper specialized individuals to examine like one type of atom or something insane like that. And so our critical thinking skills, their focus and their application shift from the natural world itself to the source of experts who study the natural world.
Right. So
Am
you're,
I making sense?
yeah, I see the case that you're building up here for, hyper specific instruments and, even people specializing in those fields, right? Like, I don't know, people that have done work for 20 years in the field and such. But what I would say to that, I guess my retort would be more catered to if something doesn't pass the most basic form, because we always start from the most basic form, right? So let's just say, let's not put it in that category just yet, because I think we'll be, it's kind of like a leap of logic to say that everything is that hyper specific, like that we're getting so far advanced with technology. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of AI. Let's just say it that way, right? Like we don't know that stuff, offhand. But what we can know, something simple. Let's start from the very basic. So if we can start from the very basic and find out if it's foundational roots of where it comes from is passed by a way that we can verify something to be true or not, then it can go into that realm of like hyper specificity, right? But you can't put it in
Yeah.
that realm. You can't put it in that realm if it doesn't pass the basic forms of how we understand something to be true. So if in between the most basic way to understand something and then it makes a leap of logic into like hyper specificity, then we're going to have to find out why there was a leap of logic. Like I had to assume this from step 1 to like step 10. Step 5 was a leap of logic where I had to assume. So just for the sake of making the theoretical modeling and the more hyper specific understanding, I had to jump step 5 and to say that I had to just assume on this particular way for the method to continue. Then I've did a disservice, right? I've did
Yeah.
something that's against what I've been saying about critical thinking. So my thing is this: if you start something from its foundation and you move it into the realm of assumption in between where you are calling, we got the experts and we got super powerful microscopes or whatever the case is, and then I'm already working off of, I've gotten so far away from reality where now I'm talking about mathematical constructs and I have no relation to physical and natural world. I'm so far in the metaphysical, like there's not many people that are going to follow me there. But at the same time, in between my process from where I started learning to where I end up, my conclusion, somewhere in between there, I left the physical and natural world to have to think about it in another way. So my thing is to you is like, you can identify that from its foundation. You can know that the person left reality and went into something else. Like we're not talking about things that are tangibly in the natural world that we have. We're talking about things in the super metaphysical, right? Like the shape of an atom or
Quick
whatever.
question.
We're we couldn't approach that in a way like we'd have to get the quote unquote experts involved. Like you know what I'm saying? But
So
from
wait,
our
just let me
foundation, we
ask you a
started
quick
off
question.
already. From our foundation, we started off with somewhere an assumption, and I think that's what's happening with cosmology. So, in regards to this conversation, right, about what we're talking about in here, we've leapt from reality. We made a logical leap of like, I listen. So I'm just gonna talk about what we've dealt with, right? When we talk about cosmology, we talk about people that have come in here and try to defend the Earth being a globe, and astrophysicists been doing it for 5 years. They make logical leaps from, I see the sun moving across the sky. And then we said, okay, we all see that, this is a no doubt to everybody. So how can we know that it's the earth moving? And so from the understanding that we see the sun moving across the sky, they would say, we have to make an inference. We have to assume, right, for the sake of the model. And I'm like, the sake of the model? Like, what happened to physical and natural world? Where are we observing the natural phenomena of the Earth spinning? Because Earth spin is something that you would describe the Earth. It's doing something in nature. It's spinning around. So where do we go in nature? And so the place from the foundation of where we would say our reason and our logic, where we can identify something by what it's doing in the physical and natural world, we've moved past that, and now we've leapt into this logical understanding of like how something is from a theoretical model's perspective. Well, that's
Do
where
you do you wait? Sorry. Do
if
you?
you go ahead, Kermit.
Yeah. Sorry. So. Sorry for interrupting, but like you're going over a lot of things, and I just want like mini clarifications in between.
Sure.
So, do you categorically reject every model that exceeds the or leaves the natural and physical world categorically?
If it doesn't have its foundation in what we can observe, yes.
Okay.
Because
Okay. So.
observation is key. It's fundamental. So it,
Okay. So
it cannot
here's
be.
my follow-up
Go
question.
ahead. Go ahead.
So, for any claim or belief, there's a first step you must take, and that's something you can do yourself. And then, if that's solid, you go to step 2, and then you go to step 3, and you build up on that. And you're saying the globe Earth fails at step 1, so anything beyond that is moot.
No.
It's
Well. I would say step one, and it just depends what category. Like we got to be specific on this too, because like so we can talk about the
yeah. That
category.
was my third question.
Okay.
So my third follow-up question would be: is the first step logic or observation?
And the first step is observation.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so what I would say is that observation and or logic. To be honest, I don't actually have an answer to my own question regarding this, but I agree. So either logic or observation, you start at step 1, then you test it and you apply more and more, while recognizing that maybe at step 4, that's when you reach the limits of what you could do or what you could think due to your limits of expertise or just the limits of your senses. You can no longer observe, or you do not have the tools to observe. But if the foundations are correct, 1, 2, 3, 4 are good, then after that, I would say you could put your trust by after verifying. So no, so you observe 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's step 6, which is trusting an institution, but step 5 is verifying that institution. So 1, 2, 3, 4, observation, testing, doing what you can, critical thinking. 5 is then critically thinking and verifying an external source of knowledge that you cannot perform yourself. And then step 6 is trusting the conclusions or claims of said institution that could be just models or even observation of the physical world, since I'm also limited in that. What do you think of this approach?
Yeah, you're coming up to where I want to agree with you. I just don't want to agree with you because like there might be a logical leap you make in between. But yeah, I would say you're getting very close to that. So our knowledge on specific topics, right, can like I don't know. Let's do something that we can talk about like, it rationally, right? So we talk about like carpentry, right? Just something that's basic, right? Something that we know we're working with things that are tangible. So I could know based on because I don't know like how to build a car, right? So a mechanic, let's say, certain things like this, like I know because I have a vehicle, I can look at it myself. I can see the moving parts. But I'm not an expert at that. I don't know how to like fix a broken engine. Like that's not something I need to study in that, right? You follow me? But I know logically, if I hear a clanking sound, something's wrong with my car. Like, it's not what it's in its normal operational mode. So I would say like a mechanic would be able to take care of the issue. If I take it in there, I don't need to know about how to build a car fix, but I know something very fundamental that I have the necessary ability to find out whether or not that's able to be, like if he tells me, well, there was a rabbit inside of your engine, like that's why would I believe that? Like that's not I could know and be like, dude, I don't have to look at inside my engine. The rabbit wasn't inside of my engine. Like, that's stupid. Like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
I
let me
I don't.
uh, let me just modify that slightly. Let's say, and this is going to sound silly, but bear with me. Obviously, you're an intelligent person, but let's just say that this car example, the car itself or the engine, is so complex that for you to even know that a clanking sound means something's wrong with it, that very first belief that clanking is something wrong, you need to do something about it, requires your faith or your trust in the manufacturer who's going to tell you, listen, here's your car. If you hear this sound, it means something's wrong. Bring it to us. And me or you have such little knowledge about this extremely complex engine. Say it's a nuclear engine or a car or something, that for us to even begin, we'd have to take someone's word in a sense.
Yeah, but once again, because it's something that I have. If it went wrong, let's say, and that scenario could be true, but let's say the expert said whatever, like you just described, if you hear the sound or whatever. But I could then say, wait, I don't want to take it over there. I want to open it up. I want to look at it myself. They say it's complex, but let me have a look. And then I start to tinker with it. I start to take it apart. I start to figure it out on my own, but without the idea, because I didn't have to go to the expert, but I can mess with it myself. And then I would say like, whoa, well, what's this thing? I don't know what this is. Like, but it sounds like it's making the noise that I was hearing. So I can tinker with it myself. Then it becomes where I take it out of the expert's hands, put it into my hands. And now I've just figured something out. I figured out why the most complex thing was the reason why, because I didn't, the thing that I did was I was able to provide some kind of means to remove the engine to like where I started to be, you know what I mean? With my own kind of critical thinking, I've applied it to this, even though it was a super complex thing, right? They told me, don't just trust this. If you hear this noise, bring it in. I could have just went that way, right? But that's fine. I could do that. But if I was able to then get into the engine and just tinker with it, like, maybe not know what I'm doing, but I was just taking things apart or moving things around. And then I stumble upon something where I was hearing the noise and then I could see it making the noise in action or something. Then I've solved the problem myself. I didn't have to, in essence, lean my mind to the expert. So what we can do with the things that they tell us, right? The most complex things is to tinker with things, right? Let's find out. That's what Flat Earth has been doing, Kermit, by the way. These most complex ideas that they say, well, they're looking at the cosmos and all that. Well, we're like, okay, let's tinker with this. Obviously, they're saying things that are complex, but we as people can see, like what we can do about like, because they're people just like we are, right? And to say that any knowledge is far beyond any person is just making these guys out to be gods, and they're not. They're just normal people
Okay,
that have acquired knowledge.
so in the context of flat Earth, what does tinkering mean? Because it's not like either me or you can just take a spaceship and fly into space and observe what the Earth looks like. So, what is a reasonable level of tinkering?
Right. So we start to go through the method of by which so there's a narrative, right? The narrative is the Earth is a globe, we're in a vacuum of space, and these things are super complex, right? According to these guys who wax themselves intelligent and they're in collegiate arenas and such, right? So we got all this information that's out there supported by academia. And then you got your average Joe on the street, right? This guy on the internet. Okay, so the guy on the internet, he's like, well, I'm seeing these NASA photos from the ISS. There's a live stream, right? And it shows some curvature on the Earth. Okay, I see what they're saying. I know what they're talking about. How do I translate that to the surface? I'm not up there. I'm down here. How can I translate these images, right, of the Earth being what it is? Because I'm down here, they're up there. So what can we do? What a person would ask themselves, what can we do? What can we do to tinker with this information? Well, The simplest thing is because I can see that in that image they showed me from the NASA photo, right, with the ISS, got a curvature on the Earth. Well, I know that on a sphere of a set size of dimensions, I can test the geometry. Well, how can I do that, right? What is the simplest way to test geometry? Well, I know one thing for sure. When I want to tell somebody about geometry, I'm giving the information specified understanding. So geometry, you can hold like say a basketball, right? If I have a basketball, which is a sphere, and I have something like a box in my hand, which is a cube, I can say I have a basketball. What is the description for this basketball? Well, it's similar to a sphere. It has the attributes of it: radius, diameter, circumference. And I have this box in my hand, and it's a cube, and it has all the faces on it, and it's got certain size of dimensions. It's a specific size because I'm holding it in my hand. But how do I know that it's this, right? So the description, which are the definitions for how we describe these things, are going to be essential for my catalyst of what I'm going to talk about, right? So if I'm going to say the basketball is a sphere, me and you, Kermit, would agree on the definition of what a sphere is, right? Like we wouldn't disagree on that, would we?
Yeah.
Okay, so fundamentals are important, right? Fundamentals, we're starting to define, okay, this is a sphere. I'm not a dummy, right? We're going to be like, yeah, radius, diameter, circumference. And on a sphere versus a cube, we're going to have different ways to look at it. Well, how do I know that it's a sphere of a specific size, right? Well, we're going to measure this sphere and we're going to measure the cube. I'm going to tell you the dimensions of the cube, which is the box in my hand, and I'm going to tell you the dimensions of the sphere because we can use some math, right? Math is a language. It's used to describe things, and we're going to describe it with math. The size of the basketball. Well, the sphere is of this specific dimension, so it has these metrics, and we're going to apply some math. We're going to know the size, and because you want to be whatever, you want to build a company that sells these basketballs or whatever the case, you're going to need specific information. So now you have specific information about geometry and the size of the basketball and all the things that you need necessary for the foundation of the understanding, right? And also the cube. So if I was to then take it out into the public arena and I have these two things in my hands, and if I was to ask the public, which already has a foundation of understanding, they could say the basketball is the sphere and the box is the cube. And this is the dimensions for the box and this is the dimensions for the basketball, right? So now we have these basic understandings. And with logic and reason, we're able to deduce that we're all on the same page. We don't have to, there's no quarreling about whether or not I'm talking about these things in a very well understood, kind of defined way. Wouldn't you agree, Kermit, with what I'm saying so far?
Yeah, I mean, so far, yeah. Your overall model is sound. The thing is that so everything I'm hearing about the sort of non-religious flat earthers, it's a sound approach. It's the methodology is sound. Rationalism, empiricism. You got to start with the foundation, then you build up on that. It's the scientific method. It's the way to approach the truth. My only issue is the specific application in certain cases. So, for example, you talked about the International Space Station. Now, in order for you to discard what they're saying, that's let's be honest, inherently a conspiracy theory. You're either casting doubt on their honesty or at the bare minimum, their competency. And at the same time, we have to recognize that, yes, of course, it is the responsibility of every individual to use their critical thinking abilities to the maximum. However, we must also recognize that we have biases. We might not knowingly, but what we think is our rationality or logic is actually just our intuition that's disguised as such, and we may be incorrect or wrong because a lot of times a lot of things about reality seem unintuitive to us. So when it comes to these kinds of things, I mean, the ISS was a perfect example. The ISS is the single most expensive wonder of the world in all of human history. The cost of it was just so immense. And so on some level, yes, of course, critical thinking and that. But then there's the other topic. So you're applying critical thinking on the nature of the globe, but then there's a whole other field that is intrinsically tied to it, which is the critical thinking of the claim that either the entire ISS project are incompetents or liars. You talked
Right.
about
So,
a narrative.
let me say
False
this.
dilemma.
Let me say this for the sake of not putting the cart before the horse, right? I do want to just because I was going to finish with my example. I was part of the example, right? That I was talking about the difference between a cube and a sphere, and so it was used. It was used as a kind of a fundamental approach, a foundation for what I'm going to go into the next step, right? If our understanding is true about geometry, right? Because you and I are understood on that, right? We understand geometry in that way. We're not going to be lost on the idea of geometry. So, I mean, just you and I agree on that, right, Kermit? Like we can agree on that.
Yeah, the geometry.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So okay, we got some images from the ISS. You know, be it that you just exclaimed it costs a lot of money. It's the little eighth wonder of the world, yada yada, right? All this kind of stuff that they filled your head with because that's what it is, propaganda. So they put a lot of stuff in your mind, and you're just like, wow, ISS is amazing. But now we're gonna look at the images that the ISS is taking. Of course, is of geometrically speaking a spherical Earth. Okay, so now we're looking at geometry once again, right? We're dealing with geometry once again. So we're not even talking about anything to deal with the ISS. It's the application of what has been proposed to you and me. So they're proposing that the images are of a geometrical shape, which is an oblate spheroid, and its geometry is the nature of a sphere. So with that in mind, we're going to apply that information and translate it to the Earth that you and I are standing on. Now, this is important. This is the fundamental catalyst for you and my understanding of what the Earth that we're walking on right now. So the Earth that you and I are walking on right now has to deal with the images that were translated from the images that they gave us via the live stream. So the live stream, right? They show us a curved Earth. Now we're going to work on how we're going to deduce or understand to run a method by which you and I can understand something very fundamental. And I'm going to tell you that it's considered to be known as in this arena as drop over distance. So within a sphere, right? The basketball in my hand. When I want to know how much drop over the distance from point A to point B, the distance of an arc, I'm going to have a specific range depending on where I'm going to put my point A and my point B. It could be a huge arc. It could be a whole circumference. It just depends, right? So I'm going to use either a small sample set or a large one. It just depends on what I want my application to be. So now let's use geometry as our fundamental understanding. So we are on, and for all intents and purposes, walking on an oblate spheroid. If that is true, if the ISS is showing us images of a spherical Earth, then you and I can do a drop over distance test on the Earth to verify the information that we're going to get translated over from these images that we're seeing from NASA. And what we're going to understand is the Earth is of a specific set size of dimensions. So we're going to
Sorry,
look.
what's the drop over rise thing? Can you just explain that quickly?
Drop over distance. So on a geometric shape like a sphere, we're going to know how much drop there is from point A to point B on a sphere.
Like the curve.
Yes, like the curve. So the curve would be in the metrics of the sphere that you want to measure. So easily, you could measure drop over distance on a basketball because from point A to point B on any given points, right, on the basketball, you can know how much arc there is between the 2 points. So from point A would be like, if you had your finger on point A, that would be considered the apex of that sphere. So from that point to any other point B, you're going to measure a specific sample set, right? That specific sample would be any distance that you give it. It could be a short distance of an arc or a long distance of an arc or a complete circumference. So it just depends. But you're going to know how much drop between that point A to the point B there's going to be. Now, this is very sound. This isn't something illogical or unreasonable. This is something anyone can do to figure out the specific drop rate that it would have, any sphere would have. So, knowing this information, applying it to the Earth, which is, of course, the same as ISS images, and, we got round Earth images from, like, any kind of aerial footage that you see. Sometimes people put exaggerated images of the Earth, but nevertheless, it doesn't negate the fact that we're working with an oblate spheroid. So drop over distance, right, would translate over from the metrics of the Earth. So let us look at what are the metrics of the Earth, because the metrics of the Earth have already been discovered, as you and I know, Kermit. Or maybe you don't know. You need to tell me. Do you know the metrics of the Earth?
I mean, when you say that, are you talking about the quote unquote narrative, or like what the real?
Yes. Well, the narrative, but
Okay.
we're not gonna look into like running the method right now. We just want to know what are they saying about the Earth. You can look these up if you don't know. I'm not gonna hold that against you, but do you know the metrics of the Earth? If not, we can look them up. Simply put,
I mean, yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head.
yeah. Let's just look at that together, shall we? So we shall look at.
But I want to have a more like, okay, I'm seeing what you're doing, and I'm not disagreeing, and but my point here is that I just want to talk on a more broad, sort of more philosophical, foundational level.
Well, yeah. We'll get to that.
You're talking about
I will indulge you. Yeah, I will indulge you on that. But this is fundamental, Kermit. So the crux of the conversation has reached its climax. This is the climax. This is the final crescendo of the point. And if we can't get there, if you want to veer off into another area, you're going to miss the point. This is the most important part of the conversation. And if you want to veer off into a philosophy, this is what we call, now, and mind you, I'm just going to make you fully aware of this. When a mind starts to realize that it's facing the truth, it starts to veer off. So we already know this was going to happen, all of us in here. But why?
It's just that I know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. You're going to show me. You're going to apply the methodology. You're going to show me evidence.
Excuse me, you interrupt. I was going to say, please let him finish.
Wait,
let the man finish.
Wait, who's he talking to?
He's talking to you.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but like you're talking a lot, and
you interrupted Mayhem. You don't know what he was going to say. Let the gentleman finish.
I apologize. I didn't mean to be rude.
Yeah, but I would say it this way, Kermit. Us who have been doing this a while, we understand that a mind sometimes feels like it needs a way out because it's too much. When you start to realize that everything you had in your mind, as far as the Earth goes, is just a belief, it starts to reject. It goes on full reject mode, and it doesn't want to accept this information. So, if you'd like to, I can continue. If you don't want to, it's up to you. But you're about to hear the truth, and it is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right?
Right. You're going to show me the data, and it's going to prove the flat Earth, right?
It's going to show you whether or not the Earth that you thought you live on is true or not. The Earth.
Okay. My final question on this topic is that, is it not even worth considering the possibility that even if we apply the full extent of our critical thinking ability, our reasoning, and our logic, we still may be incorrect because of the complexity of the world and how it may seem to us to be extremely unintuitive?
I think that you'd be going into realms of logic that are going to entertain derivative topics such as theoretical concepts, where, as in this specific topic, deals with geometry, and therefore you don't need to go into I call it the weeds, sorry, but you don't need to go into the weeds about like different philosophical understandings, because that's almost like you want to eat the delicious filet mignon when you haven't even understood how to cut it. Like you have to go to the basic first and figure out if something is real or not, and then go into that. So that's why right now we're on geometry. We're at the point where you're going to start to realize, like, and you're trying to divine what's going to happen. You don't know that yet, but your mind already is preparing you. See, we know this. We've dealt with this so many times. But I'm asking you, if it's okay with you, we'll go into geometry and figure out if the Earth is a globe or not by way of us being able to measure it. But it's up to you. Do you want to go
Okay.
into it?
Yeah,
Are you
sure,
ready
sure.
for this? So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'll take the red pill.
Take the. Yeah, good man. All right, so now we're going to talk about geometry in a way that I was describing the cube and the basketball in my hand with the ways that we understand how to measure such a thing, right? With the radius, diameter, and circumference. Radius, diameter, and circumference. So within the metrics of a sphere, we know that they hold the keys to like geometry in that way. So, and we can understand the size of drop over distance and the size of the basketball and all these things, and we can apply some maths to it, right? Pretty simple maths. It's not complicated or anything. So we're going to look at the metrics of the Earth. So let us look together, right? We must type into Google, what is the radius of Earth? So if you can, at the same time, type that into your Google. And, I want to hear if you got the metric. Just let me know. There's 3 of them that we need, actually.
It says 6,371 kilometers.
Correct. I don't know if you want to write that down or not, but just if you have a good memory, you might want to just keep that in mind. So we have the radius. Now let us look for circumference. What is this? What is the circumference of Earth?
1 second.
Mm-hmm.
40,000 kilometers.
Okay. Now let's look for the diameter. What is the diameter of Earth?
Wasn't it just double the radius?
Right, but I mean, you have to know that when you punch it into Google, it's public information. That's why it's redundant. Indulge me.
Okay, 12,742 kilometers.
Yeah, and you can write these metrics down if you'd like, or if you have, like I said, a good memory, you'd be able to just remember that. Okay, so we know the size of the Earth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Earth is of a specific set size of dimensions, right? So now we got something to work with. Now we are not just working off of some crazy notion that the Earth is not a globe. We're working with metrics. The Earth is of a set size of dimensions. Now, with this information in hand, we can go out into the field. So that is the next step that we are going to be taking. Now, not specifically, really, but in this conversation, we can do a kind of like a mental exercise. Okay. So
Okay.
if we go out into the field, the best place to actually measure the Earth is going to be a place without any topographical variances, because I think that's going to make the test that much more difficult. So we must go to a place that has the least amount of topographical differences. So where do you think that place I would be talking about would be, where we don't have to deal with land topography? Which
the ocean.
I give it away.
The ocean, the water.
Well, the ocean, bodies of water that would exceed an amount of sample set that we need to measure, right? So a lake, an ocean, these are good sample sets, right? We can go and remember, just like the basketball, we don't need the entire circumference to know that it's a sphere. We just need a small sample set to understand, okay, I take a small sample set here, somebody in another country takes a small sample set over there, and people all across the Earth can do the very same thing. We can take small sample sets, let's put a number to it, right? I'll use miles. You might want to translate this into kilometers, but I'll say, let's use 20 miles. That's a pretty good sample set, but we can use a distance that we can work with. Or 10 miles even. I mean, we just have to, the only thing we're looking for right now, we're only concerned with the geometry. That's it. Because right now we have in our hand. Yes? Did you say something?
No, I just said yeah.
Okay. So what we have in our hand is the metrics of the Earth, which of course, the radius, diameter, circumference. So now we're going to go out into the field, and we know that what we want to do is we want to get a sample set that's going to give us a range of distance so that we can find this arc. There must be an arc from point A to point B. Remember, point A will be the apex of where you stand on the globe, because anywhere you are, you're basically on top of the ball, let's say. Not really, but in this way you can think about You're on the very top of that ball, and any way away from you will be a drop over distance, right?
Yeah.
So with this drop over distance, we're going to figure out how much drop over distance are we going to have before we can start to see things to disappear behind the curvature of the Earth. Meaning, things are going to disappear behind this alleged curvature. The rotundity of the Earth, and therefore we're going to find out if the Earth is curving at set rate. Set rate. The rate of drop over distance. That is most important. That's key. Now, we can't just say we see things disappearing because that's just not going to do it for us. We're going to need to know at what distance they disappear, because that's going to tell us from the geometry of Earth that we've been given, like the one you've already discovered. We're going to be finding out when we are going to stop to see something and when it starts to disappear. So we have right now a valued understanding of that, and one method that we've applied it to is something called the black swan. You might have already heard it, so I'm just going to tell you. So the black swan is something that disproves the geometry of the Earth being a globe, and then therefore puts it into a realm of that there is no curvature. So when we do this test, okay, it can be done over any body of water. But this specific one was done in California, and it was done using some oil rigs as demarcation distance markers. And so these distance markers that were used as to demarcate a distance from the point of observation to where we see those distance markers. So we're using a simple formula here, which is 8 inches per mile squared, right? And in that distance is going to tell us how far away the curvature of the Earth should be on a respected globe at the stated, which is the metrics that you've seen thus far. So we're going to apply simple geometry, right, to the distance. And so what we're doing in this test, we're going to use a visual distance. And so what we're looking for is the horizon. And the horizon, as described by the definition, is where the sky meets the Earth. And you can look this definition up. I'm not making this up. This is something we can all agree upon. And I'm asking you, would you agree upon the definition of horizon, Kermit?
The horizon is the apparent curve that separates the surface of a celestial body from its sky when viewed from the perspective of an observer on or near the surface of the relevant body. This curve divides all viewing directions based on whether it intersects the relevant body's surface or not.
Right, but we're not reading from Oxford's dictionary term. So that's not I know where you went with that. And I know why you went with that, because there's a bias there leaning towards the globe. So the definition is not that one. So when you go into,
I just looked it up on Wikipedia.
Somebody can put Wikipedia, right? So it's not Oxford's dictionary version of the defined term. See,
okay.
I'd like to pick the question for $500, please.
Thank you, Crypto. But it's not Oxford's dictionary defined definition for the term horizon.
Okay, so what's your definition again?
It's not my definition. It's Oxford's dictionary definition for the term horizon.
Can I just get in here quickly? Just think about it logically. Just think about it logically. When you see a horizon, what are you actually seeing?
You're seeing the furthest extent of the Earth before it starts curving downwards, or just
you're
over.
not actually seeing that. That's what you're telling us that you're seeing. What are you actually seeing?
A line.
You're seeing a line. Fantastic. So your interpretation of that could be that that's where the Earth starts to curve, or it could be that at that point I can't resolve anything anymore, and that would happen on a flat Earth too. Now there's ways of testing which of these that is. Now bear in mind there's also a third option, that the limit of your vision happens before the Earth starts to curve, right? So that's a third option. So what we need to do first of all is ask ourselves, is that effect going to happen regardless of the shape? Okay, because that's an important question. And the answer is very simple to that. You can go into your kitchen, you put your eyes down to the level of the kitchen table, the flat kitchen table. Do you have a horizon on a kitchen table?
I mean, the kitchen table ends, so yeah, I think so.
Well, you get to the limit of your vision, depending on how far you've dropped down relative to the kitchen table, right? You get to the limit of your vision where the ground is rising up to your eye level, and everything else above that is not kitchen table, right? So there's a horizon on a kitchen table, which isn't a sphere. So doesn't that tell you that effect happens regardless of the shape?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so then the horizon can't be based on a sphere. So it has to be something else, right?
But I just said that it could be in either case. And sure, we could rely on our eyes, but we could also like rely on instruments that let us zoom in really far. I mean, don't a lot of sailors say that when you're in the ocean and you observe ships,
dude, no
they
offense.
sort of what?
No offense, you're changing the subject now. We're talking about the definition of a horizon, right? The definition of a horizon doesn't rely on it being a sphere, as we've just demonstrated. So when Miggy tells you that the horizon definition, so when Miggy tells you that the horizon, so am I cutting out or is he cutting out?
No, I think he's interrupting you. Like he's trying to go, but you're still speaking. Go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead, Crypto.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just finish quickly. So when he tells you that the horizon definition doesn't require a sphere, we've just demonstrated that to be true. So it must be something else. And I think that a much more sensible definition for horizon would be just an optical phenomena where the ground appears to meet the sky.
Okay, but the thing is that, well, first of all, I wasn't changing the subject, and secondly, you said the horizon doesn't require the globe Earth model, but that doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive. It still could be.
Well, I gave you the three.
Yeah,
I gave you the three options.
The definition, however, it's in the Oxford's dictionary, is described as what Crypto was saying, as the sky meets the earth. That would be the best way to describe it, because that's leaving geometry out of the question. It's just the sky meets the earth. That's what I wanted you to look at, but obviously you went to the Wikipedia. You didn't go to the defined term. You see what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, you asked me for the definition. I didn't know where else to
the
get it from.
definition per the defined way that people know it to be, which is the sky meets the earth. You went into Wikipedia.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
right.
Okay.
So, can you see the discrepancy here, or shall I point it out to you again?
Okay, so the horizon is the line where the
No. Sorry, Kermit. The defined term. I want you to stand on this or not. Do you know the defined term? What it meant was that where the sky meets the earth. Per the definition, are we agreeing on the definition of how the defined definition is for the horizon?
State the definition?
Yes.
Well, state the definition again.
Okay, can you look it up? Type in, what is the definition for horizon?
Definition of horizon. And you want me to go to the Oxford Dictionary?
Well, it's going to usually come up. It'll be the first result.
Oh, the line at which the Earth's surface and the sky appear to meet.
That's it. That's all it is.
Yeah, okay. I agree with
basically,
that. Yes.
That's what you said. That's what you basically said. It's the line there. And Crypto was saying that's the sky meets the earth. And he gave you a way to look at it, from your kitchen table and such. But it's just described as that. That's it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And within that definition, there are three possibilities, right?
Well, what we're doing now is to ascertain more information. So we're working off the definition that you and I. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to dispute the definition. Do we agree on the definition?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's what I wanted to get to. So before we move off to the next point, we agreed on the definition. We agree on the geometry of the said rhetoric. Whatever the rhetoric is for the Earth being a globe. You agree with all these things, right?
Yeah, I mean, so far everything seems fine.
Okay. And now what we're doing, without any bias, is going to test this said geometry, which is why I used the sample set within the context of bringing up the black swan, that was an example of testing the geometry. Okay.
The black swan is that California experiment?
Correct. I'm thinking some people might have already put it into the live stream voice text. Remember the text channel that I took?
Yeah. Live stream
Okay.
text channel. I mean, it's just a lot of memes.
Let me see. Somebody might want to put it up. I'm on my phone, so.
Yeah, Sam.
Hang on.
It's all just memes.
Well, for now, that one. Thank you, Clipcord.
The modus Tullians, holy shnikes, this is gonna leave a mark. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. If the Earth's sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, P, then every horizon distant measurement must be no more than 1.225 times square root of observer's height in feet, Q. Geometric horizon curve calculators, not Q. Horizon distance greater than 9.41 miles, therefore not P. Earth is not a sphere, but by ball. Platform habitat 9.41 miles. Platform hill house 6.21 miles. Observer height 1 foot. Max distance geometric horizon sphere 1.22 miles.
Correct. And it formulated there in the modus tollens, as you saw in the very beginning on the top portion of that image, in a way that you can see that if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. So it put it in regards to the geometry of the Earth, right? So the radius of it being understood to be 3959 miles, which you can convert that over to kilometers, which you already did when you looked it up. So you can just insert kilometers there instead of miles. So if the Earth with a sphere of 3959 miles, P, then every horizon distance measurement must be no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. So I'm just going to stop there, jump from there down to the bottom image. And as you can see, the oil rigs that are in view there are used as distance markers, okay, to demarcate a distance from the observer, making the observer at 1 foot off the water, 1 foot off the water, off into the distance, is looking at these oil rigs, which are said to be from the observer to the oil rigs at a set distance, right? So we're using them as distance markers. But beyond that, can you see the horizon that's beyond that, beyond the oil rigs?
Yeah.
Okay, so the horizon beyond that would be the thing that we're going to be looking at, because as you and I understand from the globe perspective, that's where things start to disappear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so understanding that much already, that beyond the horizon, that's where things fall away from the globe, and you can't see anymore because the globe's curvature is hiding that, whatever's beyond that. So now we're going to look at from the observer height at 1 foot, right? We're going to do some simple geometric math here. So if you're doing the 8 inches per mile squared, and then we're saying that if the sphere is at a specific set size of dimensions, that the 1 foot observer height should be seeing a geometric horizon, geometry, right? A geometric horizon that's no more than 1.22 miles away from the observer at 1 foot. So the observation that's being made is at 1 foot off the water, and looking across the distance, across the way to where the oil rigs are, and zooming in can see a horizon that's beyond 9.41 miles, which is beyond platform habitat. But the only reason why these oil rigs are there is to demarcate a distance, so we know what we're working with. So from the observer to those oil rigs, beyond the oil rigs to the horizon, there's a distance far greater than 9.41 miles. So what we're looking at is here on the simple geometry, that the distance to the curvature of the Earth, or the horizon where it should be, is at 1.22 miles away. This is drop over distance. So the drop over distance as where the curvature of the Earth should be, the horizon should be, it should be at 1.22 miles away from an observer at 1 foot off the water. But as we can see, the distance to the horizon exceeds 9.41 miles. So formulating it back up on top with the if P then Q, well, of course, we'd have to say that if the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959 P, for every horizon distance measurement must be no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, which is 1 foot. We're using 1 foot. The geometric horizon curve calculators would predict it to be not Q, the horizon is greater than 9.41 miles, therefore not P, the Earth is not a sphere. So it stands to reason that using geometry, we can find out that the Earth is not what we've been told. As far as we can see the geometry of the Earth being, which is, of course, you have that in hand right now. So looking at this observation and many more that have been done, can always predict that the Earth is not a globe via the metrics. So at 1 foot, we should start seeing the horizon at 1.22 miles. We do not see the horizon at 1.22 miles because we can see a distance far greater than 9.41 miles. So therefore, the Earth is not the set size of dimensions that they tell us. Using a small sample set of 10 miles, we can easily debunk the geometry of the Earth being a globe. Therefore, there is no curvature measured, and therefore the Earth is not a globe.
Wait, so based on the dimensions we have, the horizon should be no more than 1.22 miles. Is that what it's saying?
With the geometry specified as what when you typed in, remember the radius, diameter, circumference? Yeah, exactly. Specified to the dimensions of the Earth, specifically speaking, to the dimensions of the Earth. It is not what they've been telling us. So,
right, but like when it curves, if you have something like really tall, you can still see it peeking over the edge, right? Like it's not like a corner, right? It's a curve. So if you have something really tall, you should still be able to see at least the top part of it. Like the further away it goes, the less of the top part that you see until it completely goes over the curve, right? So
yeah.
when looking at these oil rigs, how much
Yeah,
of
yes,
its
yes. Listen, listen.
base?
Yes, listen, listen. Peeking over the edge, considering the edge is 1.2 miles based on your height. So if you're 1 foot off the ground, then the edge is 1.2 miles, and you should see things that are taller sticking above it. Yes, but continue with the example. That was blatantly obvious.
Yeah, but the
Right,
horizon still needs to be where the sky. Remember, we agreed on the definition, so we're working based off of what we agree upon. So we agreed upon the metrics of the Earth being what they are, and also the definition for horizon where the sky meets the Earth. Now, where the sky meets the Earth, the geometric horizon should be at 1.22 miles away from the observer at 1 foot.
Oh,
There
so
you
the
go.
line that we
Yeah.
see at the
Yes.
distance is supposed to be in front of the
That's
oil
right.
rigs.
That's correct. Not,
Oh,
yeah, you
okay,
got
okay, okay. I
You got
see.
it. That's it.
Ah,
That's it. So bye bye ball, essentially. But if anybody else wants to, they can take over from this point. I think we've reached a conclusion, I guess, in my conversation part. I would walk him to the 3 points, but it's really, I don't know. I'll just wait for some other time. I think we've kind of been in the conversation for quite a bit. So if anybody wants to take over, I'll give you a point on it. Kermit, it's been good having a conversation with you. At least you've been cordial.
it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time and effort, and your, you've been very kind. Sorry for all the interruptions. It's just you've been like moving really quick between topics, and I need to slow down a little bit just to like
My bad
clarify
too,
something.
and I apologize for that. But like, it's just because there's so much to cut. Like, there's still a lot more. Trust me. And you got questions, and I know the panel's here ready to talk to you about things. And but I just feel like we've kind of reached a point here. Whether or not you want to take your leave or not, that's up to you. But if you want to know more, there's people in here that can talk to you about a lot. We got intelligent people in here, Kermit. So, like, yeah, you just if you want to stick around.
Well, I've got some time left. So now the question is, well, what's next? Like, okay, so the globe model is out the window. So we know the Earth is flat, but you guys, at least what the other lady was saying, is that you make no claims beyond this. So you're not saying if the Earth is like a square or a circle, right?
Yeah, the
Hello?
grandiose claim. Yeah, it's not being made as to like what the overall realm of existence is. No one in
So
here making that. So if there is anybody in here making that, then you need to report it to me or any of the other mods, because nobody ever is making that claim.
okay. So is this the extent of what we can like empirically and observably prove about the natural world? This is the end.
What the existence of like all places that have been discovered thus far, so far as we know, like land masses and such, and that sort of thing. As far as like beyond that, I'll let somebody else take over. I gotta be heading out though.
I can talk a bit if anyone else wants to assist me. You can.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead. I just wanted to thank Mayhem before he leaves. Thanks, Mayhem.
Yeah, good job, Mayhem.
Yeah, no worries, guys. I think this conversation needed a little bit more context, and I've kind of gave it as much as I can possible for Kermit and for anyone listening. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that.
yeah, thanks again. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, he's a
now
good thinker.
obviously- what?
Yeah, here, Kermit, this is what it looks like, okay? So everyone
Did you
understood.
remember the girl wanted to say something?
Oh no, I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Jesus Christ. All right, whatever. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, so now the logical next question is, well, okay, so how far does it go? Because if it's flat, then is there an end or is it infinite?
Well, I've never like reached a point where I can explore whether it's the end or infinite. It's all in the realm of speculation when you ask these questions. My inclination would be to say there is an end because infinite seems quite an unnatural concept. But yeah, in my opinion, I feel like the questions you're asking is akin to someone asking, God, hey God, how did you make this earth? Like, I didn't make it. I don't know the answers to it. And if I'm going to give you an answer, I would be lying in the sense I'm not confidently telling you a fact. I'm just, throwing out a guess.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with admitting not knowing something. I respect that. It's all good.
Yeah,
But,
it's just,
okay, so
I think you're expecting answers and this forum's not going to give you these answers.
yeah. Well, you don't know what you don't know. So when I came here, I mean, obviously, I expect answers because I have questions. But the flat Earth model doesn't seem to be as comprehensive as I thought, or as comprehensive as other
there is
people who have talked about it to me.
Yeah, there's no flat Earth model. That's a misnomer.
Yeah. I see that now. Although, I mean, this seems to be the consensus here, but the other one I was talking about, like the religious ones, did have like a more comprehensive model to it. And even this one other guy, he was a bit, I don't think he was religious, but he was talking about there's like the ice wall around the edges that's being patrolled by the militaries to ensure that no one detects it. And he's like, there's land masses beyond it that are rich in resources and lots of, yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's just lots of stuff.
That's speculation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I guess, but he really believed it, so I don't know. In any case, I'll leave those differing opinions aside. So naturally,
Well, Kermit, listen,
yeah.
Kermit, there is such thing as the Antarctic Treaty.
Yeah, why is that always brought up? Like, well, what's up with that? Okay, there's an Antarctic treaty.
Well, you just said, well, we'll leave these opinions aside. It's not an opinion. There's travel restrictions here in reality.
Okay. So, do you
Is that
believe in
an
like
opinion? Is that an opinion that I do not get to choose exactly where I travel?
Wait. So, are you saying
Is
that
it
there
an
is?
opinion or not that my travel is limited here in reality? Whether or not on the way to the store or on the way to somewhere 10,000 miles away.
I mean, yeah, obviously, it's a fact.
Okay, so you don't need to denigrate the idea. Oh, people say you can't live here, and we will leave these opinions elsewhere. Well, it's just a fact. You can't go everywhere you want.
That I wasn't trying to denigrate everyone. I was just
No,
trying
I
to
know.
not.
It doesn't matter what. Listen, what you were trying to denigrate the idea that it is an opinion that you can't travel freely.
No, I wasn't even talking about travel freely. I was saying that like
Okay, so
the
you can
consensus.
recant that. You said, well, it sounded very religious that someone said that you can't travel freely. Did you say that?
The claim was a bit. Wait, the claim was a bit more complex than that.
Well,
He was claiming that.
you're boiling it down. Well, why did you boil it down?
Well, I explained that he said that there are constant.
You prefaced it with religion, correct?
I was simply following
Did
up from
you
the point.
preface it with religion?
Yeah, I mentioned the guy wasn't religious.
Okay, so let's just I'll let you go on, but you seem to think that it was an opinion that travel is restricted.
No, the claim he was making was that
You said
travel
you
was
can't go to
restricted.
Antarctica, this and that.
No. I know that going to Antarctica has certain laws regarding that. That's not what I'm denying. What he was saying is that all the global authorities and militaries are cooperating to constantly patrol the edge, the entire circumference of the Earth.
Okay, and that's where I jumped in. I said that the Antarctic Treaty does exist, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
But
Well,
yeah,
There
no,
are
I mean,
there
well,
are
if I
there
could,
are there are
if I could speak to
militaries
the
enforcing that.
one.
And oh, sorry, go ahead, Elijah.
Yeah, sorry. So, we like to use this clip from the Navy where they say that 99% of the world's oceans are policed by them, and they dare you to try them. So I don't know. Either that's hyperbole or a lie, or it's true. So it's not really something that they said just because. They probably said it because I cited the Navy. So
I understand that the US Navy is immensely powerful and has the logistical reach to cover the Earth. And in a sense, yes, the entire world's ocean are, in a sense, US territory, and so is the airspace because of their dominance. However, and going back to the previous point, I never rejected the law existed. What I was doubting was the intensive security and monitoring to enforce that law. I never denied the Antarctic treaty, but the idea that the entire circumference of the Earth is constantly monitored and patrolled, I mean, that's a task that not even the US is up to. And if they were, that would be extremely wasteful of the resources. Plus,
well, that would be assuming that they would be in a circumference around the North Pole of some kind, right? But again, speculating, we don't know that. We don't know the orientation of the land masses, where it ends, where it begins. So, I mean, it's your fault for asking a question that can't be answered, really.
Well, I understand. That's exactly why I said I want to discard that, because that was a differing opinion that is not being held here. That's why I said I'll discard it, because this isn't what you guys are claiming. I was just conveying what someone else told me, and then I said, okay, I won't continue because.
Even if I was an ice ringer, let's say I was, we don't have the means or the permission to explore beyond 60 degrees south of the equator. Now, seeing is that the maps are all that the maps that we have, if we were to go into this uncharted territory, we would just get lost. So, like, it's impossible without the help of others anyway.
We'd either get lost or stopped. There is footage of people that tried to go beyond the 60th latitude, and they were stopped by the Australian Navy. It's not just the U.S. that protects the waters, and it would be before the 60th. They would be patrolling before it. They wouldn't let you get near it.
Is that what they're called? The ice ringers?
No, you're referring to the ice wall, the ice shelf. That's a whole nother topic. That would be beyond the 60th parallel.
And that's something you guys don't make a claim on.
Yeah, ice ringer is a term that I made myself. But we also, a very strong definition to understand here is begging the question, right? Another one is bigot, right? So, but because we're aware of what bigotry is and what it leads to, the breakdown of communication of all human society, we tend to try to stay away from labels, because when particularly anyone, you can think of yourself, I've thought of myself, if I'm looking to a label to define someone, and once I begin asking them questions, there's going to be a range of things that fall outside of that label. Therefore, any thoughts that I would have on that person based on that label would just be bigotry, really, if I were to push and demand that. Maybe not demand, but we tend to be curious, and we're curious. Sometimes, we have a conclusion, the label, and we try to work backwards from that. And people don't see how kind of rude that can be, in general, but bigotry is a major deal. And it's something that I wish people were more aware of, because they don't understand that it breeds hypocrisy as well. Because you point at groups that are doing things similar to what you're doing, because there's no such thing as, well, I mean, people label themselves, and again, it comes the behavior of everything that I just mentioned. So,
Wait,
like, ice ringer, flat earther, globalist, these things don't really mean anything when you're in a real intellectual conversation.
Okay, wait, are you accusing me of asking loaded questions and being a bigot, or?
No, I'm giving you the opportunity to become aware of what bigot is, to shy away from it moving forward.
Yeah, okay, I'm well aware of what bigotry is. And that's not my intent.
Like, for instance, so Miggy went over with you, if the Earth were a globe of specific dimensions, then there would be obviously geometric consequences to that. We don't see that. Therefore, the claim must be false, right? So even though that's true, there's a bunch of people in the world who hold a belief strongly and ardently that the Earth is a globe. And majority of these people label flat earthers and criticize them for things that I don't even believe. Like, so yeah, in effect, most people that enter this subject are bigots by the definition. And so I think since that's the case, since 99% of people that I come across, that I talk to in this conversation, are bigots, I thought you should know.
Oh, I think I understand. I guess you guys get a lot of mockery from a lot of people, huh? Yeah. Yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's not. I mean, I don't care. I think I pity them, because they don't understand that bigotry is, again, I mean, racism is a subset of bigotry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. So you see how dangerous it is, how it disallows people to actually communicate effectively.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And these conversations are healthy, I think.
Yeah. I say that to say, like, we don't have a model. I guess another important term to know would be reification. That would mean creating a model and then, looking at the model as reality when that's not really the case. That we don't. I mean, if someone had a model, there would be no assumptions. Like if I have a car model of a real car, it's just a model of a real car. You know what I'm saying? But everybody knows what a car is. So at this point, people assume, well, there's a model of the earth because we all know what the earth is. Well, we've exposed to many people that, well, that's not the case. So we know that there is no model of the earth, because if it ain't a globe, then what the fuck is it? Right? We shouldn't be asking that question in 2023. Um, another uh, another point of hypnotism is when they say, "Oh, is the Earth flat or round?" Well, those are descriptions of shapes, not shapes, which is weird because it makes it. I can't even. It's a false dichotomy between two falsehoods. I don't even know how you do that, if that's even a thing. So it's like, okay, is the Earth flat or round? And they say, well, how do you know it's flat? How big is the Earth? How the hell would I know? How the hell would anybody know what that? And that goes back to the point. It's like, well, actually, you think you know because you have a shape. There are dimensions, and then you're like, well, haha, you don't have dimensions. Therefore, why should I even listen to you? It's very hard to
So,
get people to really think.
well, logically, since the Earth is an object, it must have dimensions. So it
Of
must
course, but
take
the
the form
problem
of.
is, of course, obviously, but nobody knows what they are. We only have one set of dimensions to go off of, and those are wrong in 2023. So if they've lied about the dimensions of the Earth and the shape of the Earth, then to me, it kind of makes me feel like, well, it really isn't possible. Because then people say, well, how the hell would you measure the Earth? Exactly. How has anyone ever measured it? What method or what epistemology would you use to satisfy that question? Right? Well, the answer is, who the hell knows? So I know it's an object. I know it's has to have a shape, just like mountains have shapes, just like my human body has a shape, just like, the edge of a lake has a shape. You know, okay, but what is it is the question that everybody
Do you
wants to know.
think?
Honestly,
Sorry, I thought you finished. Did I interrupt?
it's fine. It's fine.
So my question then is it a case of we currently do not know, or is it a case of this is impossible to know?
Um. Well, we don't yet know, and it's 2023. So I mean, do with that what you
What's
will.
I don't see what the significance of 2023 is, to be honest.
Well, it's 2023. We have a lie that claims that we've known for thousands of years, and we've discovered that that's a lie. So here it is in 2023 after all this time, and the question is still if we know the shape of the Earth, which we don't. We have 2,000 years and no definitive shape that we can evidence.
Do you make any claims regarding the intent of the lie, or also no claims?
Well, the intent of the lie is clear for those of us who want to go that route. But I mean, again, it's not like you can use science for that. That's totally the wrong tool for that discussion. So the intent of the lie, How would we get down to the intent of the lie? Well, I know for sure that the result of the lie is atheist saying like they've literally created like the God of the gaps fallacy specifically for people who say God created it. But it's true. Something did create this place. We didn't create this place. This place didn't just pop into existence out of nothing. The rules of logic and the laws of physics, they didn't make themselves. So, but the atheists, none of that means anything to them. Anything that I just said. So somewhere the intent is in the result of their logic and reasoning. Now, if you go back
What?
500 years ago when heliocentrism started, yes, and I do mean started, heliocentrism specifically, the thing about it is that it was the Roman Catholic Church that started that lie. And we know there's no justification for it because all of the people thereafter um, have exposed that in their own journals and their own words.
Wait, so the result of the globe Earth model is an increase in atheism?
What?
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you, but you said when you look at the result, you see that is this like atheists trying to debunk God?
Well, you have a whole slew of terms, just like you have terms for the globe religion that isn't real, right? So one of the big arguments in large debate circles about creation, right, is that you can't say that God created this place. That's a God of the gaps, like kind of fallacy to say, well, we don't know because God created it. But that's actually just true. When I say God, I just mean some being that again made the laws and the rules of this land and the land itself, because we didn't make it, number one. Number two, we have no fucking idea how to make dirt. But dirt is here. Put seeds in the dirt, things grow out of it. We eat. Like water falls from the sky. As remedial as that sounds, it is quite true.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm not making any claims. I'm just pointing out truthhoods, really. I'm not doing anything special.
I see. Yeah, the server is really not what I was expecting.
That's a good thing. I think.
Yeah, it's fine. The few flat earthers I talked always had a very large model, but you guys are content with the observable, testable reality and not going beyond that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's isn't that the standard that academia is supposed to be holding?
Isn't that the standard they are holding?
Exactly. No, it's not. But it should be, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we can agree on that for sure.
Yeah, I want to pay $100,000 for my child to go to a school that's going to undo all the logic that I've taught her. Or at the very least, she's going to have to set it aside to just accept a system of rules in an environment that is purely theoretical. And some thought experiment. You know, Einstein was coined the best. Well, he just made the best thought experiments. I thought that was insane. Sabine Hasselhoffen. I really have to learn her her name. You know, it's interesting because she said, you know, he's not famous for any, you know, physical or natural experiments, which is what a physicist should be concerned with. He was a good thought experimentalists. And when you look at all these people, you look at Michio Kaku, which is another world-renowned physicist, but honestly a world-renowned theoretical physicist. He also admits that they don't use the scientific method. They use assumptions and math. To really boil it down simply, he didn't say that, but what he said is we go by the seat of our pants. It's leaps of logic, guesswork, no premises. Well, okay, that's the end of his quote. So there are premises that are assumed and not proven. In logical syllogisms, you have to have like two premises that prove a conclusion, not assumptions that just lead to more assumptions. That's ridiculous. But this is how the world operates for some reason. And we're here like, what the fuck is going on? We're flat earthers trying to teach as many people these truths as possible. That, what you think they're teaching, what you think you heard on the TV, what you think you heard in a YouTube video by some supposed professor is not really what it is. And they've also, like, think about it. When you first get into, is it flat or round? Again, flat and round is not an actual shape. Flat earth is not a shape. Well, okay, maybe some people will speculate as to it being some type of circular disc, whatever. But I mean, that's no different than the speculation of we live in a circular donut disc galaxy in the vacuum of space. That's the same thing they think we believe. It's actually what they believe. Because in the paradigm now, the universe is flat because it expanded faster than the speed of light, and that's the reason we actually see everything that we see. We see the galaxy, but we're inside it at the same time. Wow, that's interesting. Obviously, I'm being facetious. It's not interesting. It's a disgusting lie that I'm upset having ever believed without actually questioning it. It's just like the planetary alignment happened. I have my Celestron binoculars, and I went to look at the planetary alignment, and I saw all the planets and the moon aligned, and I was like, and at the same time, I'm a part of what I'm looking at in the sky. This Earth right here is in alignment with everything else that I'm looking at. That is the biggest crap of shit that I've ever heard.
Wait, so did you see the planets align or not?
Yes, I did. But the point is, because we're a part of the solar system, quote unquote, if you take that for granted, then you would go, oh, wow, this Earth, us, all of us are a part of what I'm witnessing in the sky. But what's the basis of that? How do you know that? It does, damn sure didn't look that way. And there was no way for me to imagine it. The only thing I could do was separate my experience from someone telling me, well, I'm a part of the solar system. Then I could just Google a picture of the planets aligned, and then I would go, well, that was me. But that has nothing to do with my actual real world experience of observing it. Yep. It's pretty hard, because people resonate with truth when they're willing to listen, and that's why they ask questions about the edge. Because honestly, that's actually that's what we would want to know. No one wants to consider a world where they're actually trapped, even though you're trapped on the globe as well. There's some kind of mind thing where it's like, well, this is all we have, and if we could go into space, then we would one day eventually. But to think that there's actually some cutoff or some place that you can't go beyond, like you can't tell a human they live in a box. or a cage or whatever, they're going to try to get out. Right?
Yeah.
That's just our nature. And that's why most people, when we say, well, this place must be finite because what's infinite, like the woman that said earlier, Stacy, it's like, since that's the case, people go, well, where's the edge? Why the fuck isn't the government talking? What do you mean? What it starts to raise up questions that are real to them, but because we have no answers, they fall back on the, well, that's because that's dumb. Of course, the government would have said something. Of course, we would have, somebody somewhere would have said something. Well, hello, my name's Elijah. I'm saying something. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I mean by bigots. Like, it's so dumb. It's so hypocritical. It's like, I am a person. This server is a person. The 14 billion flat earthers on TikTok, well, it's probably way more than that, but the 14 billion people on TikTok that believe that the earth is flat, they're saying something, and people are still acting like no one's saying anything. That's absurd. You got Edwin Hubble. If you look at Edwin Hubble, he's like, yeah, we can't disprove that the earth is stationary and in the center of everything, but and that's not a claim I'm willing to make either, that we're the center of everything, but whatever. He just says that, just off of philosophical grounds, we reject that. Einstein said the same thing. Stephen Hawking said the same thing. There are other physicists that are less well known that say, yeah, why the fuck would I challenge academia? That's a bad idea. Obviously, the flat earthers know how bad of an idea challenging academia is, because here we are.
Bad in what sense?
Say again.
Bad in what sense?
I quote, well, I can't quote, but I'll paraphrase. Neil deGrasse, well, I'll just tell you what Neil deGrasse Tyson basically said, that he doesn't have time for us, won't waste any time speaking to us. You know, it's crazy. There used to be a girl by the name of Sassy Unforgettable in this server, right? And she and a few people on her live stream or wherever it was they influenced Katy Perry, and Katy Perry started to question whether or not flat Earth was really a thing. And Neil deGrasse Tyson just popped up at her house to do an interview the very fucking next week. Now, you got time to speak to people who are questioning whether or not the Earth is a sphere, but you don't have, well, again, that's very stupid, because if she's questioning it, then she's just like us. But he declared that he will not speak to flat earthers. So that's what I mean. You have somebody by the name of, what was his name? I can't remember right now. It's not important. They took his YouTube channel down, so unfortunately, I can't show you the clip either. I didn't download it. Young Moses was his name. And he waited to speak to supposedly one of the leading physicists and people who had, he asked the guy, so you're the guy that you've done lengthy experiments on gravity, yada, yada, yada. He's like, yes, 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 yes. He's like, great. Let me ask you just two questions. You know, the physicists couldn't answer those two questions. The two questions pertain to entropy of gas, basically, yeah, and how gravity doesn't affect it at all. And he could not answer the question.
You're not talking about Brian Mullins, are you, Eli?
No, Brian Mullen is like fucking a nobody compared to this guy. But he literally he went to a university after this guy's, lecture. He waited to ask this guy some questions, because the guy stood back to have questions asked, and he asked him about the entropy of gas and how his experiments could prove that gravity would affect it. And the guy didn't answer him. I don't mean he went, I don't mean he stonewalled them and went stone cold silent. I just mean the guy tried to answer with non sequiturs, meaning answers that weren't related to the question at all. And young Moses left it at that. These people don't want for us to disrupt what they claim is true. They don't want that. I mean, you could go to a university tomorrow, speak to a math professor and ask him about the black swan that Miggy showed you, and ask him, why isn't the geometric horizon here? I guarantee you he's not going to have an answer. Anti-flat earthers have come up with an answer, but people in academia haven't even caught up to what's going on here because they don't think we have the right to challenge it in the first place. So they don't actually have an answer.
The thing about that picture you guys sent is that, I mean, aren't there a lot of people who say that when you're on a boat out in the ocean and you look through a telescope or a radar, you see the top of the ship before the bottom because it's coming over the horizon, though?
That's what they say, but if the horizon isn't geometric, then obviously that's not what's going on.
But that's what they experience. So what's happening
That's what
there?
they experience. They experience the bottom of a ship cut off. Yes. Is it a geometric horizon, though, the leading edge of the sphere? No. Experience? Real? Yes. Leading edge of a sphere based on the radius 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height will give you that? No. Not correct. So, actually, this is another point. Yeah, they take natural phenomenons or effects or things that we experience in reality, and they give you an explanation for it that isn't justified. Well, at the very least, the one about the horizon is falsifiable, thank God, because we'd have never known. So, experience real? Yes. What they told you about it? No. How do I know? Because the horizon isn't 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Now, there is an explanation. The more limited your angle is, the less you can see. That's actually why we have a horizon, because it's an optical phenomena. That's why when you use a camera, you can zoom in. It's not really zooming in. It's just magnifying the field of view that you couldn't see, and now you can. So the problem with that is, if something was physically there, you wouldn't be able to zoom past it. Like, I can't zoom past the building if it's in my line of sight, right? So if the horizon is my line of sight, distance to the edge of the sphere, I'd never be able to zoom beyond it, right? That just makes sense.
I guess.
All right, let me explain it to you like this. When talking about limiting angles. Take a brick, right? Put it on the floor. Can you see it in your mind?
A what?
Take a brick.
Yeah.
A brick. Put it on the floor. Can you see it in your mind?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Move it out 3 miles. Can you see it?
Probably not. No, I don't think so.
Take out a pair of binoculars. Can you see it?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. But eventually you move it out, even you can't see it with the binoculars. Here's the point. Now, build a tower on top of it. Can you see it then? Can you see the tower?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the angular resolution of your eyes isn't going to change just because you can see what was built on top of that brick. The bottom bricks would still be missing, but they'd be there. It's just too small of an angle for your eyes or your optical device to resolve. That's why we get this cutoff phenomena. It's not the only reason, though. There's multiple, because remember, the globe only has one reason things get cut off. But in actuality, there are many reasons, like Shoaling. You know what shoaling is?
No.
It's like when you're off of a coast and the water is coming in, and there's like a big hump of it, just because there's the steep of the elevation of the land underneath the water. It increases, quicker than there's more of a gradual grade. No, there's less of a gradual grade. I'm sorry. Like the closer you're coming in, and it sort of creates these phenomena where the waves seem higher. Just Google it. Many things happen, and people mistake some of these things for Earth curvature, but you don't have to mistake them for Earth curvature. The test would be, well, the Earth curvature is actually the horizon being a geometric Earth measured distance from you as the observer. If you can't confirm that, then all you're doing is begging the question. Begging the question being assuming your conclusion is true rather than proving the premise in the first place. What we do is very different. We don't do that.
How do you resolve the fact that the flat Earth is so easily provable, yet so unpopular and contested by so many people? If
Can't
it's
solve it,
so,
unfortunately, because people are
it's
hell
what?
bent on. Can't solve it. People are hell bent on falsehoods. For instance, wealth is also a mindset, but people have a poor mindset instead. You can't tell them that because they'll just deny you and tell you how the government's holding them down and all this and all that. It's a religion on its own. You you can't tell people how to be free. Unfortunately, they have to want it. Man, like for instance, okay. Remember what I said about when you first get introduced to this subject, they present to you a false dichotomy of flat
Wait,
and round.
what do you mean by wealth is a mindset? What does that
So
mean?
you can't get wealthy if your mind isn't there first. You can't do anything without your mind being there first. That's just a truism. It's not that deep.
It's just
And
what it
who?
said. If you think, oh, this is my last $20, then that's where you're stuck thinking. If you don't have an abundance mindset, if you're always stuck in a position of lack, that's where you're going to be. If you see the neighbor with 5 cars and go, he's such an asshole, why don't I have a car? That's your mindset. That's not the neighbor.
hmm and again, that also leads to a form of bigotry. Like my mom just yesterday, she was like, "Look at this nice house," and I was like, "Yeah, mom. Well, you know what happens? It, I don't want to get into that. Any further questions, or do you understand the point?"
Yeah, I mean, I get your perspective. I'll have to look at this Black Swan thing. I want to see if there are any other images or
Yeah,
uh
just go to a beach if you can. For me, I live in New York, so I just went to Coney Island, and then I just look at New Jersey and the coastline from New Jersey, and I'm like, okay, well, I know that's more than 6 miles away. The geometric horizon from my point of view was still 1.2 miles because 1.2 times 1 is 1.2. And there was no horizon there at 1.2 miles. I just saw one straight line of sight to New Jersey 6 miles away. It's very simple. Shore to
well,
shore.
I'm in Dubai, and the Gulf is the Persian Gulf is a
hmm
very calm and flat sea.
hmm
But I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that I should be able to see Qatar or Iran or any of the
No,
other.
you have multiple ways to do this. You could get like a ship tracker. Like if you live near like a what do you call that? Shipping lanes or whatever. then you could just get a ship tracker that'll tell you what the distance to one of those ships are. Then you get your known elevation. Then you'll be able to calculate where the horizon should be. And then you can watch the boat. If the boat goes beyond where the horizon would be, and you can clearly see the boat and you can clearly see the horizon behind it, then you've just validated what we've been telling you. Multiple ways to do it.
And if I don't see the ship at all,
What does that mean? Because remember, you have to tie it back. And that's what I was going to get into. When we first get here, we're presented with a false dichotomy, right? And then people start flooding, like the internet is flooded with why the earth isn't flat. And then they'll present you with all these flat earth arguments, supposedly, none which that I carry, and reasons that the earth can't be flat. See, the reason why we're here is because we didn't go that route. We said, well, why is it a globe? Right? So you have to validate the globe to falsify it. You can't look at flat earth. That doesn't work. So when you look at the horizon, you have to ask yourself what that means in the globe paradigm. So if you can't confirm the distance to the horizon, then just looking at the horizon and saying that's Earth curve is a begging the question fallacy. It's a formological fallacy, meaning it's a breakdown in the form of logic that you're using because you have a premise that is assumed rather than proven. So this is how you prove that premise is simply measure that the horizon is the distance it is by using something to reference it off of, which would be the boat, which would be those oil rigs. That's why we did that. Doesn't that sound like it makes sense?
it does sound like there's some sense to it. It does sound methodical, scientific.
I'd argue
guess
it's
I'll
not
have to-
science, but science is an entirely different subject, but it is what it is. You don't,
Yeah, I
you
guess
don't, it's a category error because you don't use science for shapes in geometry. The science is science. It's the study of the natural and physical world. So you usually have an if A then B statement. That's your hypothesis, and then you're going to take that hypothesis and you're going to devise a test in some way to falsify or validate what your hypothesis is. What we've been talking about is not that.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess I got to get going now. So thank you, everyone. Apologies if I came off rude by interrupting. It's just that there was a lot of clarifications I needed. So yeah, and I'm gonna get going. Was there something you wanted to say?
Next time you come back, let's talk about lunar eclipses. Seeing is that's one of the first supposedly recorded by Aristotle proofs of a globe. That's a very interesting one as well. Seeing is that it's blatantly obvious, not that, but I'm hoping that in your mind you're like, what are you talking about? Of course, that's like I've seen those like countless times. At this point, I know that yeah. Well, when you come back, we'll talk about that.
All right, sweet.
Yeah, nice
thank you,
talking to
everyone.
you, Kermit.
Nice talking to you too. Thank you. Yeah, everyone here seems pretty cool too.
Yeah, we get a lot of trolls and stuff, but you've come across really respectful, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate. Actually, when I was getting verified by the Aether guy, still don't know how to pronounce that name. Like we just spent the whole time chatting, and he's talking about his kids, and it was fun. Anyway, see you guys.
See you.
Tags! What is your profession!
See, old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did.